So this is a little um, presentation about using the four-circle method to describe some of the more popular, well-known Cremonese instruments. And what I wanted to do is sort of go through time using starting with Andrea Amati and going to describe some later fiddles that are kind of more would be considered modern type violins. I'm going to start with Andrea Amati, and then we're going to go to a Guarneri del Gesù, 1741, and a Stradivari P-form violin. We're going to use the Betz as an example. These are two different tracks. There's two different ways to get there. There's one involves going through the Niccolo Amati grand pattern violin. And the biggest difference between the Andrea Amati and these later fiddles is the width of the body, mostly, especially the C-bouts. And there's two different ways that I'm going to show how to get there. One of them is pretty direct, just by making the waist wider, and the other one is a more interesting kind of proportional system where we using the four circles method. By using a smaller C-bout, we actually end up with a wider instrument. I'll show you how that works. The first thing we're going to do is go down the right side of our little chart there, from Andrea Amati to the P-form. We're going to start with Andrea Amati. This drawing looks complicated. It's not that complicated. I'm about to explain how to do the whole thing rather quickly. I go into more detail in other presentations, I think, but I just want to go through the basic parts of this drawing. This is using Harry Mareson's geometry engine, which I coded this four-circle drawing into. And this is a stick figure drawing, that I call it, of this four-circle layout. So this is the four circles in this relationship, which most of the people who are watching this video already understand what this means. It's got a Vesica Pisces in the lower bout for the second turns, which are the same size circles are used in the upper bout for the second turns. These are point locator lines, and they are touching the point locator points in the upper and lower bouts, center of the upper bout, center of the second turns in the lower bout. These are the points circles. They're 5/6 of the C-bout circles, and where those two things intersect, the lines and the circles, we draw some lines across. These are the limits of the C-bout, and so on the Stradivari form, for example, there would be lines 2 and 3, the inner lines. These are block locator points for the upper bout. Those are block locator lines. These are block locator points for the lower bout. These are block locator lines. Now where these circles, the upper bout circle and the lower bout circle, intersect these lines, at these points we draw lines across. These would be lines 1 and 4 on a Stradivari form. We're going to use these to draw the rest of the corners. So on the violin and viola forms, these would actually be you could use these for the cutout for the upper and lower corner blocks. It doesn't really work for cello, but we still, even in the cello, would use these for this purpose here. We're going to take this measurement as a radius for the corner block arcs, and they work like this. They go there. Okay, it draws the inside and outside of the lower corner blocks and the outside of the upper corner block, and then some fraction of that. In this case, it's 4/5, 0.8. Draws the inside, and that is an Andrea Amati form. This is the geometry engine drawing of those relationships that I just described. I like this geometry engine because, well, for this purpose it's good because it doesn't fudge. These are drawn by a computer, and the relationships are just exactly as I described. Also, what you're looking at is an interrelated web of relationships, of pieces, and so if I change one, all the rest of them change without me doing anything. So I can make and modify drawings by just changing the values, or one or two values, and everything else goes along for the ride. Anyway, this is the Andrea Amati form. It draws a violin that looks like this. This kind of Andrea Amati violin, which is a very popular form, which is used for a long time. Here's a Niccolo Amati violin from quite a bit later. And this is our first stop here on our path. So we're going to go from there down this proportional system to get to grand pattern. So here's the stick figure again. I'm drawing these lines here to keep the width of the C-bout the same, but we're going to replace the C-bout circles with these smaller circles. Now, instead of being 4/5 of the lower bout, these C-bout circles in the layout are 2/3. Okay, what that means is that we have to move this down, and now when we scale this back up, the whole thing's going to be wider. I drew in the point circles, and these are the point layout lines, and these are where the points of the corners go. Now, it's probably hard to see from this drawing that C-bouts in this fiddle are a little bit small, and the points of the corners kind of point in a little kind of aggressively. And so to make it look a little more normal and more like it used to, we're going to do this. We're going to add we're going to superpose a C-bout circle in there. This is not to draw the outline, but it's what I call an X-shifted superposed C-bout circle. So in other words, it doesn't change where the narrowest point of the instrument is, but it uses the upper bout circle to find a center that's farther out from the layout circle. And we're going to draw the corner layout lines from there instead, which moves the points of the corners a little bit like that. Okay, so here's the geometry engine drawing of that thing that I coded in there. And this is a grand pattern Niccolo Amati violin. This is the second stop on our little trip. And now we got to go from the grand pattern to the Stradivari P form. How hard is this going to be? Not that hard. Because basically we're using the same drawing, except we're just going to kind of get rid of this smaller circle. It's there for the layout, but in the P form, instead of just using this superposed C-bout for laying out the corners, we're going to actually use it to draw the outline of the instrument, which means we have to center the we're going to center the points of the corners on that same arc. And this is the geometry engine drawing. So that's all I did is I drew the C-bout circle in the outline for this thing from the superposed C-bout instead of from the narrower one, the 2/3. There's one other little change. So that's the only change we made so far. The other thing I did is I changed the radius of the inside of the upper C-bout from 4/5 to 1/2 of the outer, because this block distance is quite a bit bigger than the other one. And this is a Stradivari P. This is the bets. So 2 basic changes gets us from Andrea Amati to the P form. Okay, that's the end of that road for this presentation. Now we're going to go down this other path here, and using a wider C-bout. We're going to call this part 2, and we're going to start over again. This is the same drawing that I showed you at the beginning. These are the same figures, little stick figures. Everything's in the same relationship. Andrea Amati thing. I'm drawing this, marking where the C bout is, not because we're going to keep it the same, but because we're going to change that. So we're going to change this relationship now. This is 2/3 of the upper bout instead of 1/2 the lower bout. This is another very common relationship. It's more often found in violas and cellos than in violins. But there it is. Okay, we just pushed the C bouts apart. And what that means is we have to now collapse this whole thing. So when we scaled back up this Andrea Amati drawing now with the wider C bout, everything's going to be wider. We'll put on our second turns and our standard layout lines. I'm going to make one change to this layout line. I'm going to move this from the center of the upper bout to the center of the second turn. Okay, and there's the drawing, the geometry engine drawing with those two changes. Okay, I changed the value of the C bout to 2/3 of the upper bout, and I changed that one locator point. And this is a Guarnieri del Gesù violin from 1741. So, anyway, I hope that that makes sense. And my goal here was to try to illustrate the usefulness of this method as a tool for working violin makers. And that is it. Thanks.